Today we're really pleased to have Dennis McBurney from Carlisle, Pennsylvania here. Dennis is well known for his research skills and creating and publishing incredible histories and checklists and so forth for postcard artists and photographers. He's here today to tell us about Walter Wellman comic postcards from 1906 to 1945. Thank you, Dennis, and I'll turn this over to you and we'll get started.
Today, I wanted to talk about Walter Wellman. He's an unusual character in the world of postcards. He did a lot of artistry, but he also published a little over 300 of his own postcards. Before we get too deep in him, I realized as I was putting this together, there's a whole lot of people that know me only from my postcard work, and many of you I've never met except for through these Zoom meetings. I signed my name, Dennis McBurney, first name over last name, and we'll show that Walter Wellman's version that's he's famous for. But I was born in Kansas, graduated from high school in Kingman, Kansas, lived almost 50 years there before somebody sold the Boeing Wichita facility, didn't like the deal. While I was in Wichita, Tori and I were married in 1976. We've got two children that are both married, two grandsons. All of them live in the Portland, Oregon area. I completed my bachelor's degree with manufacturing emphasis at Wichita State. I think because of Wichita State Association, I never really became a big college football fan. Our team basically was ended by a plane crash. But while I was at the university, I was working for Boeing Wichita as a tool designer. Tool design got me into computer graphics. We called it a computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. And through some of my assignments, I got into desktop publishing as well. But through Boeing, I received a lot of additional training, computing systems design, development support. Most of my database designs were done with graphic representation, so I did a lot of work with that. Also did DBA work. As the kids were getting older and needing dad around less, I went back and learned a little bit more about the visual arts. As I was going up to school, you're either college bound or you got to take art classes, and I never got to take art classes. So I remedied that in the 90s, did finish an associate's degree, and Tori and I we bought a commercial building there in Douglas, just basically down the alley from where we lived, opened the Douglas Arts and Crafts Center. It had a florist in there, gift shop, and we had several artists. Tori had her stained glass studio in there. Mine was in there as well, and also did a lot of woodworking. All good collectors have to start somewhere. I started collecting stamps as a kid, just the normal worldwide stamps, and thought they were all kind of pretty and interesting. And I put rediscovered in quotes there because the way I rediscovered stamps was when I was helping my dad clean out a storage shed. He handed me a box. It was about a 2-foot cube. And in that box were the stamps that I had collected as a kid. Also included a stamp album that my stepbrother had collected and lost interest in. And there were a whole bunch of things called first day covers, which I was not familiar with. A first day cover has a stamp on an envelope, has a first day of issue cancellation with the city where it was first issued. And in many cases, they had some very interesting cachets or little designs on the envelopes that had to do with the stamp. Through that association, I was a member of the Wichita Stamp Club, and I think we got an invitation or something at a meeting to go to the Wichita Postcard Club show. And I became hooked. I found some exaggeration postcards that were exaggeration wheat. and my family had been wheat farmers in Kansas, and I'd never seen a wheat stalk that was taller than the tallest corn. My association with the Postcard Club, I did help create some checklists for Dedrick and Martin. Uh, when I moved to the uh, South Central uh, Pennsylvania area, I found about the Hershey bar cards and asked lots of questions, found some experts in here, and we collaborated and I put together a checklist for that. Within the last couple of years, did the Pops Connard and the Max Halverson checklist. Today, I'm going to talk about the Wellman checklist. I've started to put together pieces for Carmichael, Dwig or C.V. Dwiggins, Rick Geary. You'll hear some more about that at the Wichita show. So enough about me. Let's talk about Walter. This was the scrawl I was talking about. That actually is Walter over Wellman. At least that's what he always claimed. He was born in New Hampshire, 1879. He graduated in high school just over the border in Massachusetts. He also had a technical degree. His was an architecture degree at MIT in 1902. When he was there, he got involved in the art uh, side of their school paper. He was a cartoonist for them and also a men's glee club member. His artwork caught the eye of somebody at the Boston Globe, we believe. And he did some freelance work for them. Immediately after his graduation from MIT, he moved to New York City. And there he got introduced to all the magazines and newspapers that were always soliciting comics. And he continued working with them in the mid 1900s and through the mid 1910s. We'll talk about his second postcard career, 30s to the mid 40s. When he was in New York City, he married Matilda Riggi. She was a fellow artist in 1905. And like many of these cartoonists, we think the pretty woman in their drawings were their own wives. And it may have been. I've never seen a picture of Matilda. But Wellman, this what I talked about earlier, he's the only one that we know of that really printed a whole line of his postcards. Many of the series that I'll show you today, primarily during the great postcard craze. And he and Matilda moved to New Jersey in 1917. And that was towards the end of World War I. He made use, we think, of his architecture degree at the Building and Loan Organization for the rest of his life, which was about 32 years. After postcards starting to become a little more popular again, he designed some Lennon era postcards. They weren't all on Lennon stock, but the earliest one, and I'll show it to you, is from the Asheville Postcard Company, which I always thought of as a kind of a second-hand postcard company, but they did solicit, sponsor some original work. Other publishers you might recognize: Color Picture, Kurtyke, Dexter Press, Metropolitan, Tickner Brothers, and Nice or Nice Manufacturing, depending on who you talk to. He also did 3 series of military comic cards, World War I, or World War II rather. Those were pretty well documented in the military comics checklists. And he did die in October 1949. From the obituary, I read he had already created a set of Valentine's cards, which would have been for the 1950 time period. Here's the signature, the scrawl I was talking about. I apologize for this being kind of pixelated, but it's from a 1903 postcard. You can actually read Walter and then Wellman. Well, that didn't last too long. He started to make it a little more floral, and you can struggle, but you can get W sort of an L, T-E-R, and then W-E-L-L-M. And if that's an A, I'm surprised, but that would have been it, and then the N. His middle initial was P, but I don't think this is a P. Later on, through a series of probably some clipping and some other odds and ends. He ended up using kind of a double WW stacked. It started looking like some of the landscape pieces. I show these as a couple of his early examples when he was doing mostly cartooning, introducing Sugar Flow and Joe Spice, and she knew her groceries. And here's the Wellman scrawl, another one from Vaudeville. And again, both these say Vaudeville, but very different fonts. Got Walter Wellman. You can almost make out the E and the R in that one. Gary always identified a lot, Gary Spengler always identified a lot more Walter Wellman postcards than what I did. And I asked him one time why. And he said these little feet were always a key for him. If they had those little feet with little short high heels, then that was one kickoff. My indicator was always the pretty woman and the strange, odd-looking dude. 1906, we start seeing people putting their postcards in scrapbooks. And these are a couple of postcards that were copyrighted by Charles Rose in New York City. Some men are hearts are in awful condition. How about yours? And we see a image that looks very much like Charles Gibson's Pretty Women in they did a wallpaper with all these different faces. That's what it reminds me of. And here's one of the first appearances of Cupid. This time he's being kicked out of the house. Nothing doing, take back your heart. And we'll see the Cupid show up a few times in Wellman's work. Also in 1906, he apparently decided, well, if it's good for Charles Rose, it's good for me too. So he copyrighted several of his own designs, and they were printed on this undivided back, this souvenir mail card, which I've done some research on it. I'm not sure exactly what it was, if it was something unique to a printer that they used in New York City, but it's not a USPS postal card. And it's not an exposition. They also used official souvenir postal or official souvenir mail cards. They both showed up. These are some of the examples copyrighted by Wellman. Single pane, we've got a two-part installment, and then we've got the 12-part calendar. There's also a four-part installment that I didn't show here, but it was also has the same souvenir mail cards back. When Walter, he incorporated himself, which I think he continued to use this as his umbrella company for all of his freelance artwork. But as a postcard publisher, the first 2 months in 1907, they had this. This is the Wellman Girl. Whether it's Matilda or not, I don't know. And then 2 months later, they had to switch over to the divided back that we're familiar with nowadays. This was a series that was done with both backs. Postcard collectors, we have this love-hate relationship with numbers. Wellman numbered a lot of his postcards, and the next several series all have numbers. This one was popular beach seashore scenes, 16 in this series. We see the black hand, 8 in this series. Why in the world you would take on a extortion racket, early versions of the mafia, I'm not sure, but that's what this series contains. There's some references there, and their extortion notes apparently often use this black hand symbol. So for whatever it's worth, that series is out there. 1907, he also did several general comics. The Are You Married? The Henpecked Husband concept will show up continually. And Love Me, Love My Dog. This series again, the goofy guys, the, I guess, sort of pretty girl, but this overdone hair, that's also very typical. The rest of the this series is, as I says, General Comics. This is one of the more famous Walter Wellman series. The Need a Doctor tried Dan Cupid. 32 in this set. This is one of the first sets I actively tried to finish as a set. I had run across uh, one of his company advertisements showing all 32 cards and about an 11 by 17 flyer that he had sent out to his salesman. So I picked out three that sort of amused me. Help yourself. We've got avoid all sweets. Well, I'll allow you to take just one. $4, please. This doctor's always wanting his money. And then this one's matrimony. If one don't cure you, repeat this at regular intervals. $25, please. And then this was one of the few cards that Wellman did that has the woman's face shown instead of just her profile. The caption, try a diet of bread and kisses. You may omit the bread if you wish. $5, please. So again, this is a series of 32. We're up to 1908 at this point. 1908 was a very busy year. This is another series of 32. They all have new numbers, 2000, 2031, but 13 of them are recycles of the 2007. 12 of them have exactly the same caption, but being 1908, leap year, this little guy being captured by the women on the seashore, it's got the new caption. It was, this is no place for a man. In 1908, it's leap year, boys. And this guy, he's being escorted along the seashore. He's got what I think of as horse blinders, so he doesn't see the pretty girls out in the waves, but it's merely as a precaution. Again, another large series. The Merry Widows, 1908, we're seeing the suffragettes front and center on a lot of the news here in the United States as well as England. And I think Susan collects this series, The Merry Widow Wiles. So the play The Merry Widow is out about this time. We see again a little guy, he's pinned to her hat through a very large hat pin when the Merry Widow gets her rights. And then there's this big hand series. This is a series I saw probably for a couple years before I ever actually bought one because I didn't like it. But this settles your hash. A palmist said, I'd marry money, not brains. And she's even got a dollar sign in her palm. And then there's a series of 8, Last Will and Testament. This one is, I do hereby give and bequeath to my devoted hubby a full-size oil painting of myself. He can show this proudly to my successor and tell her what a good cook I was. I'm sure every second wife would love that. Again, we're looking at some of the suffragette colors. The yellow I showed on the Merry Widows, and the other series had the green and the purple. And the weaker 6 series of 12 is also mostly purple and green. Even when you're being married, you're bound to feel like this. This little guy's ear is being stretched a long ways. And this woman, she'd like to have a couple of these rings, but he has nothing. And she takes you shopping, don't you feel like this? And then Hal, in his suffragette presentation, showed many in this series. This is one of my favorites. It's one of the last ones I was able to actually find. I want her be a man. Woman's got her feet up there, got her little tiny feet. And this is a series that probably is one of my favorites from the color. Life's Little Tragedies in 3 acts. Remember the hat pin? Well, she's got a big one. She's being chased, flirted with, and apparently she isn't interested. She uses her hat pin and sticks that guy. This second guy has a little more luck. He grins at the girl. He wins the girl, and he and the girls have twins. The last one here is He's apparently late from something. He's being stared at. She sees the hair on his shoulder and he prays for forgiveness. Spare him. But this series is it's one of the first ones that wasn't numbered. And it's also kind of got the shellac finish on it. I dropped one on a concrete floor and it really creased the corner. And I still the only one I could find. So if you want to have a pristine set of these 16, you're going to have a lot of searching to do. The Motto comic, there were 4 of these series. There's the dark green series. They say there's German kisses, but I like the little devils. So you see some little vignettes on there. The red series is all the 7 of the other cards have boo-hoo something or other. This is the oddball of the group, but it's the one I picked because I like it. It says, we didn't do nothing, but we won't do it again. I love that logic. The blue series, I think of these as just an extension of his cartoons. Boy meets girl, boy kisses girl, boy proposes to girl, girl says, no, I'm married. So she's out of there. And then a reference to current times. Again, 1910 time frames. The hobble skirt is very popular. We see it on this card. These 2 series are a little harder to finish than the first 2 I showed, the A and B series. I'm still actually looking for the 8th one in both of these series. And this is one of the first times we see colored ink on the back. The dark green series A had dark green. The red series B had red. The blue series C had black, not dark blue. And the D series green had green. Most of the time you're just seeing the black backgrounds. Susan, this is what I was talking about, the Motto series. They actually say copyright 1910 by Walter Wellman. You don't see any of the scrawl, but you do see some fairly fancy backgrounds. And it has the Wellman girl on the address side. I'm the heart shaped. I'm always thinking of you, even when I'm kissing another girl. Odd sentiment. And then this is the only card I've ever seen this on. When you marry, go to a minister who will tie a slip knot. The squiggle series, again, we think there are 8 in each of these, but not absolutely certain. When you're in love, put your whole heart in it, but don't put your foot in it. The difference in here, these are actually signed, copyright 1910 by Walter Wellman, but most of the examples you find are trimmed. The only way you'd know if it was Wellman was when you looked on the address side and saw the Wellman girl. Kind of the wreath series here. The last one, if you want to be my girl, you'll have to show a good reference from your last fellow. Again, kind of chasing trends in 1910. This is the last year their company was in business. The sepia ink. The I dreamed, there's one of them, I dreamed I saved your life. I dreamed we were engaged. I dreamed we were married. And this one, I dreamed we had a falling out. And this is the only one that is the series. I'm always dreaming of you is the caption on it. There are 9 of these. Oh, what I know about you with different scenes. Here, the couples being spied upon, I guess. Needed to find a better spot if they were hiding. Again, we're starting to see kind of in these last 2 series I'll show you, trying to cut down on art cost, I guess. Silhouettes were popular, so that's part of what he's chasing. We see these series of birthday wishes and kicking. What are you kicking about? 28 known designs, which means there are probably 32. 4 of them we just haven't found yet. And this is the last series printed with the Wellman girl. To me, this is kind of the disappointing series. Again, it's silhouettes with some kind of saying, I could learn to love you. I'd rather do this than eat. For the Heinz 57 crowd, this is one of my 57 varieties. They are signed by Wellman. It's got this little funky copyright 1910 by Walter Wellman stamp on them. Somewhere, this one's down at the bottom, that's at the bottom. But the disappointment to me in this is these cards are hard to find in good shape. Paper reminds me of the elementary school construction paper. It's not much thicker than that, if at all. And the backside, the rule, and I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but the rule itself impacted and creased the drawing side. This, many of you knew Stan Davidson. He put together some famous checklists for Dwig and Carmichael. Well, he also started to put together one for Wellman. And he did include this series in Wellman. Best I can tell, this was a case where Wellman probably did this. This font you may have seen several times in some of these previous postcards. The squiggle in the motto card, you saw a lot of that. And good old Cupid down here with his arrow quiver. This is what, this last part is what I think is probably the only thing Wellman contributed. John Winch published these. It's actually an interesting series. Michael Cassara helped me complete my series of 12 on this, and it is a kind of a cute series. But again, as far as Wellman's contribution, I think it was just that background artwork. This is a series, it's one of my favorites. I think we shared this in one of the publications that are pre-production information. Last Wifey Wears the Pants. I think of this as a strong women's series. And this is my challenge to everybody on there. Who the heck published this or printed it? I don't know. It's a very distinctive back, but I don't know who did it. I've got another unidentified publisher coming up. This is another odd series. This is by J. Beagles and Company. Again, we've got the squiggles, the fancy borders. There are 12 different designs in this series. This one I fell for you the first time I saw you. And here the girls lounging around, and the little guy here is wondering if they give free trials for a week. But each one is printed in red, green, or purple. And I only have all three colors of a few of these. I'm a good Scotsman in that if I find something I don't have and the price is right, I'll pick it up. But if it's not right, then I pass. This is the other unidentified publisher. This back shows up on a lot of cartoon postcards, comic postcards. I don't know that they are all published by the same people, but this back was used often. I think of these series here as more continuation of Wellman the cartoonist. He said, if I wouldn't marry him, he'd dump the boat, so I promised. The two-panel version, I'd rather see myself single than to have a husband who sees double. And this is one that Bill Burton introduced me to. It's another version of Life's Little Tragedies in 3 acts. This woman wants to find a man that's good looking or somebody that's rich, but she'll probably get a little runt like this one. We also see, again, a continuation. We start seeing some postcards in buff cardstock with sepia printing. This one, the guy's trying his manners. Howdy do, how are you? And then we've got this series by the Sampson brothers, which apparently this guy isn't nearly as courteous. The girl, I assume, is telling him, do try and be good. This series I've seen in the same design in both the dark blue shown here and the dark red print. This series is one of the last ones I'll show you from this time period. This has got to be 1912. Again, another leap year. The little girl's asking the guy, and he'll have to ask his mother. You're 3/4 of the way through this presentation. take a little break from the pictures here and talk about that time frame between when he was still doing some freelance work, and then we have the great postcard craze ending. And I tell you, when did it definitively end? I don't know. Sometime before World War I ended. We know we lost access to the German printers, but some people say it ended before the war started, and some say it ended about mid-war. But we do know the linen in postcard era started in 1930 or 31, lasted from 45 to 1950, again, depending on what resource you are reading. But we know that what happened was a lot of the linen era publishers, they may have had some in-house artists, but we also know that they contacted a lot of freelance artists, and that's where we think Walter Wellman came into play. Because again, remember, he's working at a loan office in New Jersey, but he's continued to do his illustration work throughout his time there. We also see exaggeration fishing postcards becoming popular again, and couples issues are always a topic of discussion. World War II, we see some more of those with sailors and soldiers. Military comics, many of them are funny. They show the lighter side of camp life, but some of them were also showing the anti-fascist propaganda. This is one, two of these were from Asheville, and as far as I can tell, Asheville was the only publisher of these series. This is the earliest one I've got, September 1st, 1929. So this is kind of pre-linen, and this isn't a linen postcard, but it is kind of colorful. Baby's first step. So we have the flapper girl, and she's showing off her moves, I guess. This other postcard, if you go out to eBay, you're going to see it many times. I think there are probably 8 or 10 listed right now. Nothing slow about the farmer's daughter here. I offered to help, and she said she sowed all her wild oats. This is one where Gary Spengler kind of had to talk me into, was this a Wellman or not a Wellman? I wasn't familiar with the Manhattan postcard publishing, so this is a consistency on the back. Sometimes this line is in the center, sometimes it's missing totally, but this is a numbered series. Again, love it or hate it. The known numbers are from C1 to C89. And so far, all of them that I've found in this series, I think we can attribute to Wellman. Again, kind of a pretty girl, a goofy looking guy, her little high heels and little feet. The other thing that shows up is his flowers were always kind of just an oval with something around them. This one is the only one I've seen in this series that looks like it's probably Walter Wellman's signature still on the artwork. These are some of the more common. We've got a whole bunch again of beach and seashore related. And then we've got the couples issues. This one, there's not much less of what was this original signature. And over on this one, this rest of the signature was probably cropped out. But again, kind of the oddball flowers. The difference in the 30s and 40s, the girls aren't always quite as felt as they were in the 1910s. We start seeing the more husky girls. Vacation postcards starting to become popular again. This is Cape Cod with all whole bunch of K's instead of the C's. We also see some references to y'all be surprised. I'm a big gun up here and unusual. Oh no, and usually loaded. Remember, Canada had their prohibition from 1918 to 1912, and the U.S. period was from 1920 to 1933. So a lot of people went up to Canada to get their legal booze. Exaggeration fishing. This is actually, I told you earlier that I started collecting exaggeration real photo postcards, but when you look in dealers, you're going to see a lot of exaggeration comic cards as well. And so these were a couple that I'd picked up along the way before I even knew I was collecting Wellman. But again, the guy, he's broken a sweat carrying these big fish to his gal. and she's exclaiming, "What a man!" And this one, pulling a big fish with his plane. Gary again pointed out there's a WW on this. So that's part of the reason we attribute it to Wellman. This was a series that I was not at all familiar with. Gary and Peggy had a couple in their stock, so I picked those up, and then later on I found on eBay two different lots that contained all 24. Only 13 in this series could I really attribute to Wellman, just from the drawing style. And this one, I don't know if this dust bunny back here is actually WW or just scrawl. We do think there are 13 in this series of the Mutoscope. We're getting to the end here. Here's some of the military comics. 1943 time frame, color picture. Walter was allowed to include his signature or his initials. Sailor Boy, the unpleasant salute to the Fuhrer, and the whack. This series, the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, again published in 1943. And if I looked up the dates, they were changed to just the WAC in July 1st of 1943. There are three in this series of 8 that have WAC on it. To my knowledge, they were never reissued without the one of the two A's in the middle. And Dexter. Again, love them or hate them. They numbered their postcards on the address side, but they weren't consistent across their different types. They did a straight side with kind of these muted colors that I show here. They also did a decal edge version. Most of those are fairly muted, and most of those have some part of Wellman's signature on it. And then they did a third issue. I guess they told they needed to brighten up their cards to compete with the others in the Lennon era. And when they redid the artwork, the other two versions have a WW down here. This one's Wellman's signature's been obliterated. The last couple of postcards, another Kurtike series. 10 in these I can really attribute to Walter Wellman. There are 5 others in the later numbers that Wellman may have done the original concept designs, but we know that there was a problem with a lot of the artwork that was submitted to these publishers, that the in-house artists that were making up the printing plates, they had a lot of free reign. C.V. Dwiggins, during an interview, he said that some of his artwork he submitted, by the time it was turned into a postcard, he didn't even recognize. And I think there are some of these Wellman's series that you could probably say the same thing. Do want to tell you, if you have some interest in reading some more about it, there's some several resources out there. Wellman's obituary is available in the newspapers. This is an early discussion about Wellman's linen cards. It's not very long, but it was kind of interesting to watch. George Miller, who still contributes in some ways to the postcard literature of today, he put a very long article together, but he concentrated on the early numbered series. He didn't get into the silhouette cards, and I don't think he got into any of the motto cards. Many of you have the book from Susan Brown Nicholson on your shelf, the Encyclopedia Postcards. There's a page for Wellman. Stan Davidson, who I mentioned earlier, he had put together a preliminary checklist. I've seen a couple versions of it. And Don Perrault provided a version that Stan himself had marked up and given to Don. So that was kind of nice to see that. The article I referenced before the meeting started about the uncle he never knew. And then those of you that like the cartoonist side, I did include this for the comic strip history. It's a series of blogs, which I wasn't familiar with, but I was glad to run across. This is my contact information. For those of you who'd like to see, well, what else is in those silly series? You can go to this. It's a tiny URL. It'll redirect you to my shared Google Drive with the public facing checklists. And I'm continuing to be a collector. Wellman, Carmichael, Dwig, Halverson, and Rick Geary. So at this point, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Dennis. That was terrific. I just marvel at all of the series and numbers, and not just a couple, but 32 in a series, and many of them in different colors. So it's just a collector's delight for sure. Walter Wellman, somebody, and then to have in this audience today, would it have been his nephew?
Yeah, we're not sure how many greats there is, but yes.
Okay, well, a relative of Walter Wellman here with us today. Thank you, Dan or Don, for being here. I really
Sure,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where do you live?
I live in Connecticut.
Okay.
My Aunt Martha was Walter's second wife, and I have a lot of pictures of him, and like I said, a lot of his artwork and so forth that come down to me. He had no children,
Wonderful that you have and have able to
so
collect
he
it
had
and
one
hold
brother,
on
and
to
he
it.
had a nephew, 8. So I knew her very well. But again, Walter Wellman died long before I was born. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's just wonderful. Thanks for being here today. Really nice. But Bill Burton, you've already got yourself unmuted, and do you have some comments?
Thanks, Al. We've got a couple here, but I'd like to ask Kyle Jolliffe to explain further when he says the Bamford Company back. Does Dennis think this is like the backs on the that he's trying to ID?
It looked a little similar to the one that he had. He was asking about
Oh,
Bamford and Company.
Okay.
as far as the one with the extra flowers on it, yeah, a lot of it does look similar. Of course, it doesn't have the BC in it. So we're
Yeah,
did
that's all. That's the reason I posted. It looks similar. That's all. Bamford and
Okay.
Company, the British publisher, in a series about actresses.
okay. Well, they also did a lot of way over the line humor for me, the crude humor, and a lot of nudity on their postcards.
Yeah, that's later Bamford stuff.
The search continues. That's why we put unidentified publisher 1 and 2 out there. Hopefully someday we'll find the answer.
Don Perrault says, unfortunately, I only have photos of Walter and my Aunt Matilda.
No,
Have
Aunt Martha.
photos? You have photos of them?
Well, no, I have photos of him about my Aunt Martha, not Matilda.
Yeah, Matilda was the first wife. She passed away. Maybe Don can help with the dates.
I think she died in 1944.
44 or
I
45
think
time
around
frame.
there.
That's what I
Yep.
remember. And shortly after she died, I never found out what their relationship was, but he married Martha fairly quickly after he was widowed. And at this point, he was in his mid to late 70s. He lived until he was 79.
Dennis, do you think those life's little tragedies are first attempts at animation for 1909?
I don't really know. I mean, we do know that Albert Carmichael went out to Hollywood. In fact, that's where he died at, was he had gone out there for early animation, but as far as what I can tell from Wellman, he never went to that market. He was pretty much print media in New York City and in that area. He apparently did a lot of work for clip art back before it was electronic. Have read about some of that, and also the greeting card companies. Don had shared one, and actually it's in the checklist if you download that. example of what his artwork was. It was for a happy birthday, wasn't it, Don?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'll fill the space a little bit more. In the chat window, there's a link to the checklist that you can find on my shared Google Drive. The intent is to eventually have that on the Wichita Postcard Club website, but it's not there yet.
I have a question or maybe a comment. I had sort of always been given the impression that nobody collects comic postcards.
You've been talking to some of the dealers around here too. But there are a few good dealers. Susan brings her card, Susan Lane. Peggy and Gary have a pretty large selection of signed artists, and most of those are not most, many of those are comic cards. But yeah, I can go around dealers and maybe half will have some comic cards that are worth looking at.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. Is it mostly certain ones that are signed by well-known artists?
It's a wide variety. There's some pretty popular series that are unidentified artists. We don't know who they are and they're not signed. But we also see Dwig. He's highly collected and was his postcards. Several of the series were produced in the millions. There are some other series that are much harder to find. Albert Carmichael's another artist that drew goofy looking guys. His guys usually have big feet, big hands, and not at all elegant, but he was fairly popular. But he only lived for about 10 years while he was drawing for a newspaper.
And then I think too of Max Halverson, who was just did World War II, a time frame there that as a kid, I mean, he was still in high school and he bicycled down to Beals in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, and got himself a job. And he couldn't remember the day we were talking about it, if they paid him 50 cents or if it was $1 per card for artwork. So pretty minimal, but he, it was money, and it was he enjoyed doing the artwork and seeing his cards published and so forth. So that was a real treat for him. He was the only artist, other than Rick Gary, that I've ever actually known and written letters, and all before we had internet, but actual handwritten letters back and forth.
Okay, if I can jump in here, just to let
Please.
you know, there are some other famous artists in the postcard world, particularly the comic linen era. One of them being Ray Walters, which there's a book on and very
Yeah.
comprehensive. And there's another one. I worked for a cartoonist at one point, and his favorite artist was Ray Fox. And I think I have to introduce Ray to more people. I have him in his own category because I think he is such a fine illustrator. So if you're looking for postcards, they're out there. You just have to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Good. Tell us what kind of work Ray Fox did.
Comic, as funny as you can get, but he was really a great draftsman. His characters are, they border on realistic, but they're funny.
Okay, good.
And he signed some of them, and of course, his name was cut off on many others.
There were publishers that, like Beals in Des Moines, Iowa, they wouldn't let my friend Max Halverson sign his things. And then he said, but come over and look here. And so he had them there, and he pointed out 2 or 3 that had the MH or Max Halverson, and they had just overlooked it. The people that, did the airbrushing and cleaning up and everything before they were photographed and published. So he said, that's just the way a kid does. He tries to, if he finds out he's not supposed to do it, then it's a challenge to try to slip one by him. And
Yeah.
he succeeded. He delighted in telling me about that.
I'd also like to know, say that I had been in contact with Alex J. He'd written an article that interested me, and I contacted him. This goes back maybe 10 years ago, and I invited him to a show, and I may have been the Ephemera show or New York one. I don't remember, but he showed up. He was very interested in what the postcard community had to say.
Really?
This is the Dennis quoted him in his discussion earlier.
Yeah, he's the one that wrote the blog about Walter Wellman's early comic, not postcards, just the comics that were published.
Yeah.
So it was
cool.
very interesting. Alex J. The one that I included in the chat is from June 17th, 2015.
Well, thank you
Again.
all so very much.